Good afternoon. My name is Christina Wisniewski, and today I'm joined by my co-counsel.
Hello, Your Honor. My name is Esther Rubina.
Hello, Your Honor. My name is Chloe Bohannon.
And we're also joined by our party representative.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Taryn Rivera.
Mr. Rivera will be joining us at council table today.
Understood.
Together we represent the prosecution in today's case. Would you like the defense now to make their appearances?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good afternoon. My name is James Ballou. I'm joined by my co-counsel, Ms. Sam Haves,
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
and Mr. Ren Emery Johnson.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
And together we represent the defendant in this case, Mr. Charlie Martin.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
We have a couple of pretrial matters, if that's okay, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
First, we'd like to ask your preferences about moving around the well.
Need to ask permission to approach the bench and opposing counsel and opposing counsel's witnesses. Other than that, you have free range of the well.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Second, if an objection is sustained, would you like a motion to strike the offending testimony or
Yes,
assume that it's true?
move to strike.
Okay, thank you. Also, additionally, we've prepared a bench book for today's trial. This just includes all relevant case documents and facts for today's proceedings. Would you like me to approach and tender?
Yes, absolutely, granted.
Thank you. We would also like to invoke Rules 603 and 615, which constructively pre-swear and sequester all witnesses, barring our party representatives, ours today being Taryn Rivera.
Perfect.
And finally, we have one more pre-trial matter. We'd like to direct your attention to the first page in that bench book.
Mhm.
Today, as the prosecution, we're pursuing one and only one count of murder. The case here is about a death that occurred on a reality TV show. Either we must show that the death was purposely committed by the defendant, or that they acted recklessly under extreme conditions that manifested an extreme indifference to the value of Mr. Armstrong's life. Today, we'll be focusing on the latter, the recklessly part of the count.
Is that your understanding as well, defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay,
We have no further pretrial matters, Your Honor. The prosecution is ready for opening statements.
excellent. Anything from defense?
Yes, Your Honor, we have a few pretrial matters as well. Firstly, we would like to know that Charlie Martin is our party representative as well.
603, all that fun stuff, yes.
Yes, Your Honor. Secondly, we've already asked opposing counsel if it would be okay for us to record, but we wanted to ask Your Honor if that would be okay as well.
Could we constructively record, or,
Actually,
yeah, that's fine. I don't think there's AMTA rules
I
against.
just wanted to ask your permission.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Additionally, would you like us to move to publish exhibits that have been inserted into evidence or assume publish?
Are you talking about pre-admitted?
When we admit exhibits into evidence?
You can constructively move to publish, let's say, yeah.
Yes, Your Honor. Additionally, because rebuttal witnesses are not allowed in this jurisdiction, we've given the government notice of intent to offer character evidence. The government has seen and signed this form.
Is that your understanding, counsel?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Permission for my co-counsel to tender that form to the
Yes,
bench.
granted. Thank you.
Additionally, Your Honor, if you could turn to the blue tab of that bench book, the pretrial motion.
Yes, sir.
If I could turn your attention to page 4, order C.
Okay,
There are several. Let me know when you're honest there.
I think I'm in case law, so,
I'm looking at the pretrial motions. I might have said the wrong color. Apologies.
I have special instructions, case law, pretrial orders.
Pretrial orders.
What case are you referring to? Because I think this is actually case law.
It might be on the other side of the tab. Apologies, Your Honor, that's not our.
No, I totally understand, so.
It should be the motions in limine.
Gotcha.
Yes, Your Honor. So order C is on page 4. There are several witnesses in this case who gave interrogations to the police. A prior court has ruled that the transcripts of those interrogations may be read onto the record at any time, barring any other evidentiary objections, and we intend to reference those transcripts throughout the case today.
Is that your understanding, counsel?
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
Noted.
Additionally, Your Honor, if you could turn to the white tab, which is relevant case law.
Okay, I'm in case law.
Yes, Your Honor. And on page 4 of this one as well, State v. Taglia. A prior court has ruled that evidence to show negligence of a third party to prove that the defendant had no way of knowing his actions could have caused bodily harm is admissible. And we expect that you'll hear evidence today that Charlie Martin had no way of knowing his actions could have caused harm to Rob Armstrong due to the negligence of Cellcop Studios and the production team of the Saboteurs.
Sorry, what case law?
State v. Taglia, Your Honor.
Understood. Is that your understanding as well, counsel?
Yes, with the exception that the evidence must also follow the other rules of evidence in Midlands.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
With that, the state is ready to proceed. The defense is ready to proceed to the case.
State ready for opening?
Please, the court. The acid, the mask, and the aftermath. Your Honor, members of the jury, what happens when someone poisons the very air that you breathe? What happens when someone tampers with the tools keeping you alive? People die, tragedy happens, and we come to find ourselves in court here today to prove that the defendant, Charlie Martin, recklessly murdered Rob Armstrong. Walk with me back to the scene of the crime. It's 12 p.m. on the set of The Saboteurs, one of the most popular reality TV shows here in Midlands. 4 contestants are left in the game, and they all line up to compete in one of the last challenges of the season. Both the defendant and Mr. Armstrong are among them. A horn blows off, the 40-foot underwater obstacle race begins, but unbeknownst to you, this challenge is rigged. Fatally rigged. Because, as you will learn here today, 6 hours prior to that horn going off, the defendant pours oxalic acid, a dangerous chemical cleaning agent, into Mr. Armstrong's mask. He then empties the oxygen tank, the very same equipment that Mr. Armstrong is supposed to use in that challenge. So going back to the challenge, Mr. Armstrong pulls up that mask. He coughs, places it back on his face, dives underwater, and never resurfaces alive. What happened underwater? Well, as you'll learn today, as Mr. Armstrong continuously breathes in this acid in his mask, he becomes confused. He becomes dizzy. His heart starts to accelerate, and then he becomes immensely fatigued. You'll hear that in one last-stage effort to save himself, Mr. Armstrong rips off that mask. But Mr. Armstrong couldn't escape the defendant's poison fast enough. The acid, the mask, and the aftermath. Today, you will hear evidence that those actions taken by the defendant constituted an extreme indifference to the value of Mr. Armstrong's life. In Midlands, that constitutes murder. And as the prosecution, it's our burden to prove you this beyond a reasonable doubt. That's simply means that we must prove that the defendant acted recklessly, which directly led to the death of Mr. Armstrong. We will meet this burden because this case rests on 3 simple facts: the acid, the mask, and the aftermath. First, from challenge designer Rowan Patel. You'll hear that fatal challenge was otherwise completely safe. He'll then give you a first-hand account of witnessing the defendant pour that acid into that mask. Second, from investigator Taryn Rivera, you'll learn the ins and the outs of that federal investigation, which ultimately led to an arrest warrant for the defendant. That's because, as you'll learn, the defendant knew of the dangers of pouring that acid in the mask, yet still did it anyways. And finally, from Dr. Atlas Hartley, you'll hear that acid and the lack of oxygen in that mask led to one fatal aftermath: the death of Mr. Armstrong. The acid, the mask, and the aftermath. So, at the end of today's trial, we'll come to you once more, ask you to remember those 3 facts, and find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Your Honor, members of the jury, may it please the court. They created the villain they needed. It's April 6th, 2025, and Rob Armstrong is competing in the diving challenge, the reality TV show The Saboteurs. For the first 5 minutes, everything is going according to plan. He's swimming fine, he's breathing fine. That is, until he becomes fatigued. His eyes become wide and unfocused. His breathing becomes visibly erratic. And eventually, he began to convulse. He ripped his respirator mask off. He was struggling for air, and he inhaled water and drowned. And all the while, the producer for that show, Riley Kay, well, she was holding the rescue divers back. Now, you may be wondering, where does Charlie Martin come into all of this? All you heard was Charlie Martin. You never heard a word about Riley Kay. Riley Kay was immediately taken into custody when she realized that Mr. Armstrong had died because she destroyed evidence. She rushed to pour water on the servers, to delete as much footage as possible, and to throw evidence into the ocean. Massive protests formed outside of Selkoff Studios, the studio which employed Riley Kay. And Mr. Armstrong's family, well, they filed a wrongful death suit against that company. And when it came time for the state to investigate, when it was time for the state to bring charges against the perpetrator of this murder, they gave Riley Kay immunity. Instead, they brought you Charlie Martin. Instead, they created the villain they needed. The villain they needed to get a major media company off the hook. When the state walked through that door today, they did so with a burden. It's a burden that will sit on that desk all throughout trial today. It's a burden that they will fail to meet. Because in today's case, the state must prove to you that Charlie Martin caused the death of Rob Armstrong beyond a reasonable doubt. What that means is that at the end of today's trial, you have just the slightest bit of doubt. If at the end of today, just one element of the state's case doesn't quite add up, then you must find Charlie Martin not guilty. Members of the jury, that is a burden that they will fail to meet. Because in today's case, you'll hear from Charlie Martin himself. He'll tell you that while Rob Armstrong struggled for over a minute, Riley Kay held back the rescue divers. He'll also tell you about a label for a bottle of oxalic acid that gave no indication that inhaling that acid could be fatal. You'll also hear from a psychologist who will tell you of the extreme pressure that reality TV shows profit from. She'll tell you that these shows, they push people to the brink, and that Charlie Martin was under constant pressure from that producer, Riley Kay. Finally, you'll hear from a witness who was threatened by that studio to give testimony against Charlie Martin today. But you won't hear that coerced testimony. Instead, you'll get a clear picture of the corruption at play. We all agree that Rob Armstrong's death was a horrible tragedy. And like Mr. Armstrong's family, we want justice. Our client wants justice, but the state took that opportunity away from us today. It is simply unjust to punish an innocent man. It is simply unjust that the state erroneously handed out immunity and let the perpetrator of a murder walk free. Do not let one injustice lead to another. They created the villain they needed. Don't let them get away with it. Thank you.
Yes, the prosecution calls Rowan Patel to the stand. Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Rowan Patel, former challenge designer of the Saboteurs, the greatest genre, formerly.
What was the Saboteurs?
It was a reality TV show where 20 contestants competed in various challenges trying to gain immunity from being voted off from those other contestants. But here's the kicker. 3 of those contestants were saboteurs, which is what it sounds like. They could sabotage other contestants to stop them from winning a challenge.
What did these sabotages consist of?
There were a wide variety of sabotages, but essentially they are production pre-approved ways of hurting another contestant's chance of winning. Think like adding some hot sauce to a dish a contestant had to eat.
Could you please explain what you did on the show as a challenge designer?
Remember those challenges I mentioned earlier? The heart of the show? I designed those challenges.
You called yourself the former challenge designer. Could you explain why that is?
I say former because over this past season, season 10, we had a contestant, Mr. Rob Armstrong, tragically pass away on set.
I'm sorry to hear that. Could you please explain the circumstances of Rob Armstrong's death?
We had an underwater scuba diving challenge. Mr. Armstrong went into the water and never came back up.
Could you describe the challenge?
Yes, it consisted of 2 parts. There was a land portion, which was essentially just running through an obstacle course. Since that was pretty simple, I threw in a weighted backpack to the mix. They kept on going through this obstacle course until they hit a lagoon, where the underwater portion began.
Could you describe the underwater portion?
Certainly. The contestants had to put on scuba gear and dive 30 feet underwater and untie some assorted color rings and bring them back to shore. This part of the challenge was where Mr. Rob died.
What was the sabotage for this challenge?
A saboteur, which there was only one this late in the season, Charlie Martin, could add 10 pounds of weight to any backpack of their choosing. Mr. Martin chose Rob Armstrong's backpack.
Objection, Your Honor, to a lack of foundation, if I may be heard.
Response first.
Lack of foundation to what?
Okay, fine, be heard.
Yes, Your Honor. A lack of foundation as to how this witness knows who Charlie Martin chose to sabotage. We haven't heard any foundation about that yet.
Sure, foundation.
He was the challenge designer on the show. Every sabotage went through him and was confirmed by him, and then carried out by Riley Kay.
Brief response.
Yes, Your Honor. We agree with opposing counsel. It's just that that foundation hasn't been laid on the record. We ask they lay it.
Agreed. So sustained, but I think you're well within your rights to just lay that foundation.
Could you explain what you did on the show a little more detail as a challenge designer?
Yes, essentially, I went back into my lab and I had a bunch of papers and I would draw out a challenge. And part of those challenges was I had to implement a part that could be sabotaged. And then I would send this part over to the rest of production, and then they would let me know what the sabotage actually was so I could help let it be carried out.
Okay, thank you. Was this challenge extremely dangerous?
No, it wasn't. It should have been a breeze for pretty much any contestant.
Have you done underwater challenges on the show prior to this?
Yes, the saboteurs have had plenty of underwater challenges throughout our 10 seasons. They make for some of the best moments.
Were there safety precautions for these challenges?
Yes, there were. There are plenty. Over the course of 10 seasons, you pretty much learn what precautions you need.
Could you please describe these precautions?
Yes, we had emergency divers paired with underwater cameras to send help for contestants in trouble. They all had emergency signals to signal for help. Then, the morning before every challenge, we would have a safety briefing, go over risk and necessary precautions to make sure everyone is on the same page.
Was there a production schedule for the day of the challenge?
Yes, there was.
Would you recognize this if shown to you today?
Absolutely.
Showing opposing counsel?
Permission granted.
Publishing exhibit, prosecution moves to publish exhibit 21. On the day of the challenge, was there a safety briefing performed?
Absolutely. It's right here, 6:30 a.m. We always had a safety briefing before a challenge.
Since there had been underwater challenges on the show before, has anything like this ever happened in seasons prior?
Absolutely not. A catastrophe like this was unprecedented until that day. Episode 9, Season 10.
On the day of the challenge, who had access to the diving equipment?
Objection, Your Honor, to a lack of foundation.
Sustained. You can lay that foundation down, that he would know that.
Since you were the challenge designer, did you know who would have access to the diving equipment?
Yes, members of production all worked together. Really, we all had our titles and our jobs, but we were one big family, and as the challenge designer, I pretty much knew everyone's access and their jobs.
So on the day of the challenge, who would have had access to this diving equipment?
There were plenty of people. The production crew, for obvious reasons, had to carry out the show, but so did any saboteurs. This late in the season, Charlie Martin was the only saboteur.
Did you see Charlie Martin at the diving equipment?
Yes, I did.
What were you doing when you saw them?
As a safety precaution, I was going through every oxygen tank ahead of the scuba diving challenge to make sure everyone had plenty of oxygen. That's when I saw Mr. Martin over by the scuba mask.
What was he doing?
He had a bag of powder in his hand and it looked like he was adding it to a mask.
Was this powder approved by production?
I had never heard of
Objection, Your
any.
Honor, to a lack of personal knowledge, if I may be heard.
Yes.
Your Honor, we have it on a good faith basis that there will be further testimony today stating that Charlie Martin was told by production that this was approved. This witness wasn't with Charlie for the entirety of his time on the show. This witness wouldn't be able to testify whether it was or wasn't approved.
Response.
Any approved sabotage should go through Rowan Patel first. If Rowan Patel doesn't know about it, then it was not production approved.
That response, Your Honor?
Yes.
But we believe there will be testimony later in trial today that will show that a producer, perhaps without consulting with Mr. Patel, did give permission to Charlie Martin to conduct this sabotage. It's not within Mr. Patel's personal knowledge to testify whether Mr. Martin was told that or not.
Anything done officially on the show would have gone through Rowan Patel. If another member of production did it without permission, that's another story. But whether it was a production approved sabotage, Rowan Patel would be able to testify to that.
So maybe a proffer might be a good idea in this instance, right? Would that be okay with you, counsel?
Your Honor, can you elaborate what you mean by a proffer specifically?
So constructively, this testimony would be heard outside of the jury's ears, and then we can re-raise this objection at a later point in the trial if need be.
Yes, Your Honor.
Does that sound agreeable to both parties? can continue with your questions and
Okay.
everything, right? And then feel free to re-raise that objection before closing arguments.
Yes, Your Honor.
If need be.
We'd be happy to.
Was this powder approved by production?
Absolutely not. I had never heard of any type of powder being allowed to be added to the scuba mask. I didn't build that into the challenge.
And if that ends your line of questioning with regards to that, you just say, hey, this is the end of the proffer.
End of the proffer.
Yes.
Okay. After the challenge, what materials did you inspect?
I inspected multiple things. Really, I looked at the whole grounds, but the main two things that I looked at were the backpacks that I mentioned earlier and the air tanks.
Let's talk about the air tanks. Did you notice anything unusual about Rob Armstrong's air tank following the challenge?
Yes, when I looked at it, it was completely empty.
Why was this unusual?
I checked to make sure that every oxygen tank had 30 minutes of oxygen. Mr. Rob Armstrong was pulled out of the water after around 15 minutes. So there should have been another 15 minutes of oxygen left in the tank, but that wasn't the case.
Your Honor, I'm going to read from the affidavit of Charlie Martin, the interrogation of Charlie Martin with the Charlottesville Police Department. Officer, you were alone with the equipment for 10 minutes. You had your scuba certifications, right? You know
Objection,
how-
Your Honor, to hearsay.
Counsel, I think this has already been agreed upon in pretrial matters, but if I'm wrong, tell me.
Yes, Your Honor. What was ruled by a prior court is that procedurally, it's permissible to read portions of the interrogation onto the record without further foundation. However, other evidentiary matters were not waived. They're still subject to the rules of evidence. And these statements
Fair
specifically from the officer are what we're objecting to.
So, hearsay,
Yes, Your Honor.
response?
Okay, so this goes on to effect on the listener. The response that I'm reading onto record is that of Charlie Martin's, which is allowed. The
So
officer's
it's hearsay,
statement
but hearsay exception.
is the prompt.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. What opposing counsel just read onto the record was the officer stating that Charlie Martin had a scuba certification. So if they aren't using it for the truth of the matter asserted, we would ask for a limiting instruction that it not be taken for that.
I did not finish reading the full quote. The officer's quote was only read to prompt Charlie Martin's following response. And it's also not being used to further prove the matter. It's being used for Charlie Martin's response.
So, the effect on the listener,
Effect on the
not
listener.
the truth of the
Yes,
matter.
yes.
Is that your understanding as well? And with a limiting instruction to the jury, we're gonna be okay and we can
Yes, Your
proceed?
Honor.
Excellent.
Officer, you were alone with the equipment for 10 minutes. You had your scuba certifications, right? You know how air tanks work? Martin, yes, I know how air tanks work. Yes, I have my scuba certifications. Now let's talk about the backpacks. What did you notice when inspecting the backpacks following the challenge?
When I looked at every backpack, the first one to stick out to me was that of Rob Armstrong's backpack. It had the wrong amount of weight in it.
How much weight was supposed to be in Rob Armstrong's backpack?
At first, every backpack had 10 pounds in it. As a sabotage, any saboteur could add another 10 pounds to it, adding 20 pounds total. But that was not how much weight was in Rob Armstrong's backpack.
How much weight was in Rob Armstrong's backpack?
30 pounds, 3 times more than that of any contestants, and 10 pounds over the allowed sabotage weight.
Did you inspect Charlie Martin's backpack?
Yes, I did.
How much weight was in Charlie Martin's backpack?
There were no weights, there was just some rocks to resemble some weights.
No further questions?
Proceed? Yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Patel. My
Good
name is Sam
afternoon.
Hicks. I got a couple questions for you today.
Okay, shoot.
You still have a copy of that production schedule in front of you, right?
Yes, right here.
You would agree with me that that production schedule was followed closely until Rob Armstrong died that day, is that right?
Yes, that'd be all the way over here.
So I want to compare what your normal safety procedures are and see how they line up with what actually happened on the day Rob Armstrong died. Because you watched the death of Rob Armstrong, right?
Yes, I did. I watched it on the underwater cameras.
Right, you were in a production truck off-site, right?
Yes, I was.
But like you said, you were watching it on those cameras, true?
Yes, we all were. It was like a watch party.
Like you said on direct examination, you know that there are rescue divers on scene in case someone needs help, right?
Yes, they should be ready to immediately go.
And you watched as Rob Armstrong started floating aimlessly in the water, right?
Yes, it was horrifying to watch.
And you would have sent rescue divers in at that point, wouldn't you?
Yes, if I were calling the shots, they'd be in immediately.
You watched as Rob Armstrong started tugging off his mask underwater, right?
Yes, I was.
And you certainly would have sent rescue divers in at that point.
Yes.
You actually had a way to contact the people who were on scene who could talk to the rescue divers, right?
Yes, we were trying to contact them at the time.
Right, you had radios that could get in contact with those people, right?
Yes.
And like you said, you were trying to contact them on those radios.
Yes, that's true.
They weren't responding, were they?
No, it was bizarre. I have no reason to know why.
Exactly, Mr. Patel, it actually says on that production schedule that the radios were checked that morning to make sure they were working.
Yes, they were.
You agree they were checked that morning to make sure they were working?
I would.
So you don't have any reason to believe that the radios weren't working?
No, I don't.
So you don't know why the on-site personnel wouldn't respond to you?
No, I don't.
You don't know if a producer on-site turned off their radio?
I would have no reason to know anything about that.
You don't know why the divers didn't go in?
No, I do not.
You don't know if a producer said, wait, not yet?
No, I don't.
So I'd like to talk about what you're doing here today, Mr. Patel, because you'd agree with me, the public, they made your company out to be a villain after all this.
Yes, the production received a lot of heat after the death of Rob Armstrong.
And you received a lot of heat yourself too, right?
Yes, when I just did my job.
Like you said, the public blamed your employer, right?
Yes,
Your employer's a studio named Selkov Studios, right?
that's correct. They produce The Saboteurs and other reality TV shows.
After Rob Armstrong's death, your TV show was canceled, right?
Yes, it was.
So you've been out of work, right?
Yes, I've been working to get another job. I'll be making a comeback soon, don't worry.
So at this point, you're living off your savings.
Yes, which I have plenty of savings, but I'm looking for another job soon.
You said you have plenty of savings, Mr. Patel. You're a month away from getting evicted, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
And Mr. Patel, you hope that Charlie Martin gets convicted today, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Because you think if Charlie Martin gets convicted, they'll stop blaming Selkov Studios.
Yes, we did nothing wrong. We did exactly what we were supposed to do. I, as the challenge designer, know the challenge was safe.
So that's a yes. You think if Charlie Martin gets convicted today, the public will stop blaming Selkov Studios.
Yes.
And they'll stop blaming you.
Yes, they will.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Patel. I have nothing further at this time.
Investigator Tanner Berger up to stand. Come on up, investigator.
Hello. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Taryn Rivera. That's Investigator Rivera to you.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, true, blue-blooded federal investigator.
Investigator Rivera, can you tell me about how you came to be in the investigating business?
Well, like I said, it's in my blood. I mean, my father was an investigator. My grandfather was an investigator. My uncle wanted to be an investigator, but he couldn't cut it, so he became a lawyer instead.
Can you tell me more about your experience as an investigator?
Oh, of course. Well, I graduated top of my class and spent some time as a state. From there, I went into the FBI and spent 10 years in the Bureau's Fraud and White Collar Crimes Division. If you ever heard of a criminal, he's probably heard of me, and he's scared of me.
Do you still work in this division?
No, I transferred. I work for the FTC now. Think of it like the FBI, but without the BI and with a TC instead. No, but seriously, we help protect the common people from fraud and deception. And you know me, I'm always looking out for the little people.
How do you look out for the little people?
Oh, classic FTC tactic. We like to go undercover, hit the bad guys or it hurts. I remember one time, I caught this real bad guy. You know, in waste management. I went undercover as his handyman, but on the down low, I was collecting evidence. That guy went away for a long time.
Investigator Rivera, why are you here in court today?
Well, in my official capacity as an FTC agent, I went undercover on the side of saboteurs. While I was there, precious little Rob Armstrong lost his life.
We'll talk about the death of Mr. Armstrong in a little bit. But first, I'd like to talk to you about your role while undercover. Why were you on the set of the saboteurs?
Well, the saboteurs had all these reports that there was rigging and that the producers were somehow rigging the show. I got sent down there to investigate that whole hubbub.
Did you have any interactions with any contestants while on set?
Oh yeah, I was undercover, so my whole job was interacting with contestants. I was able to pretty thoroughly see how the other contestants interact with each other.
What interactions did you observe the most?
I guess that would be Charlie and Rob. I didn't know at the time how important that ended up being.
Why was observing their interactions so important?
Well, I mean, as we all know, Rob Armstrong bit the dust. Since I was already there, I was able to initiate an investigation into it.
During this investigation, what did you discover?
I discovered that Charlie Martin was the prime suspect for the murder of Rob Armstrong.
We'll talk about how you came to this conclusion step by step. What was your first step for your investigation?
Well, I was on the set, so of course the first thing I considered was what experience did I have, and did I see any suspicious activities while I was there?
What suspicious activities did you reflect on first?
Naturally, I considered, what contestants interacted with Rob the most.
Did this lead you to any specific contestant?
Oh yeah, that would be Charlie Martin. That Rob, he's wicked smart. Always knew how to get under Charlie's skin. I mean, those two would always be arguing.
What type of arguments did you overhear?
Well, Rob would be hurling insults at Charlie, big man he is. I remember one time, Charlie seemed like he really had enough. I mean, he looked right at Rob and said, "Shut the hell up, Rob. I will bury you." And what do you know? Rob got buried soon after.
Your Honor, under Rule 403, may I be heard?
Sure.
Your Honor, we have it on a good faith basis that contestants on this show use the term murder and similar rhetoric to talk about eliminating contestants from the show. We believe that the investigator saying that the defendant said he wanted to bury Rob is substantially more misleading than probative for the jury, and the jury should not be allowed to hear that testimony.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor. The key statement to that objection is substantially more prejudicial than probative. This is completely probative to today's case, as we are here today because Charlie Martin is responsible for the death of Rob Armstrong. Rob Armstrong is dead. That is not outside of the game or not.
Gotcha. Response?
Yes, Your Honor, the jury hearing the defendant seemingly admitting to wanting to kill Rob is a bell that cannot be unrung.
Right.
We believe the jury should not be allowed to hear that.
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna overrule your objection, but I will issue a limiting instruction to the jury that this is not actually talking about murder or what was the actual phrase there?
I will bury you.
We're not actually talking about burying someone, that these are terms that are used in the show as a game. Does
Yes,
that
Your
sound okay with both
Yes,
of
Your
you
Honor.
guys? Okay. Thank you, counsel. Proceed.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about that. What led to Rob Armstrong's death?
I was able to determine by examining some relevant medical documents that Rob Armstrong died through acid poisoning.
Did you ever see this acid while on set of the saboteurs?
Yeah, down south in the supply closet. They had bottles of the stuff.
Who had access to the supply closet?
Well, I guess technically only the staff members of the show, but funny enough, I did see a contestant in there one time.
Investigator Rivera, if no contestants were allowed in the supply closet, what contestant did you see there?
That would be Charlie Martin. I actually saw him leaving with a bottle of what looked like the acid.
Would you recognize a label of this acid and a safety data sheet if I were to show them to you today?
Yeah, I would.
At this time, I'm approaching my bench with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 13 and 14. Permission to approach opposing counsel?
Yes.
Permission to approach the witness in turn?
It's your witness, you don't need permission.
Yes, Your Honor. Investigator Rivera, what did I just hand to you?
Well, this is the label on the bottle that I was talking about of the acid. And this is a safety data sheet talking about the potential side effects of the acid.
Where was the safety data sheet found?
The safety data sheet was actually found downloaded on Charlie's phone. We figured that out during my investigation.
Are they both a fair and accurate copy?
Yeah, it looks to me.
At this time, prosecution moves to enter Exhibit 13 and 14 as evidence.
Objection, Your Honor. We have no objections to Exhibit 13, according to
Pre-admitted, right?
a stipulation, yes, Your Honor. But as to Exhibit 14, we object hearsay to the statements made in the safety data sheet. Those statements this investigator would have no way of knowing whether or not they are true.
He's an expert witness, right?
No, Your Honor.
Oh, okay, responsive.
Yes, Your Honor. We are not using the statements on the data sheet for the truth of the matter asserted. We're just using them for the effect on the listener. We have already laid the foundation that this data sheet was found on Charlie Martin's phone. Therefore, Charlie Martin had access to this and could have read it. And we do not care whether or not the oxalic acid was actually dangerous. We just care that Charlie Martin perceived the acid to be dangerous and still decided to use it.
May I respond,
Counsel,
Your Honor?
one second, is it my understanding that you are not tenuring your investigator as an expert witness?
We are not.
Okay. Response on that?
To what Counselor just
Yes,
argued?
yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Because
According
you
to-
are offering it for the truth of the matter, right?
We're just using it for the effect on the listener,
On what listener?
on Charlie Martin. This data sheet was found on Charlie Martin's phone, and Charlie Martin read it, and because of it, had knowledge as to the dangers.
Because Charlie Martin believed it to be
Yes.
the truth,
Yes, Your Honor.
sustained.
May I respond?
It's sustained. Do you want to move to strike?
Oh, yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Let's
Let's keep it. Go.
Yes, Your Honor. Can you tell me what the label shows you, please?
Yeah, this is the label. In big font, any child who can read can see this. Harmful if swallowed. Causes severe skin burns and eye damage. If swallowed, immediately call a poison center or doctor.
How did this acid enter Rob Armstrong's system?
Well, it entered because Charlie put the acid in the mask.
What led you to this conclusion?
Well, as part of my investigation, I reviewed the
Objection, Your Honor.
interrogation.
That's a lack of personal knowledge.
Okay, response on those grounds?
Yes, Your Honor. Investigator Terry Rivera was the lead investigator during this investigation. He had access to all of the exhibits and was able to come up with this conclusion due to that.
Correct. Any other grounds for objection?
Your Honor, since this witness has not been offered as an expert, that testimony saying that oxalic acid caused the death of Rob Armstrong because of Charlie's actions is an improper expert opinion.
Your Honor, may I respond? According to Jeffries v. Polk County Police Department, it says that law enforcement officials may have specialized knowledge or training that is above the level of the average citizen, which means that they can comment on this specialized training.
Right, if they're being tenured as an expert witness. So do you want to make this an expert witness or not? That's why I'm confused, right?
According to the case law,
Which case law is it?
it's Jeffries v. Polk County Police Department.
Any idea of the case? Here we go. Okay, response based on that case law?
Your Honor, we would have objections to offering this witness as an expert. because
Well, he's not an expert, that's not what she, responds to what she's saying. Is that based on that case law, he can offer
Your Honor, if this witness is not an expert, has not been tendered as an expert, has not fulfilled the requirements of Rule 703, he cannot testify to the cause of Rob Armstrong's death or the result of Charlie Martin's actions.
Yeah, he's not giving an expert opinion because he's not an expert, he's not been tenured expert, so he can give his lay opinion. I'm gonna overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. I'll re-ask that question. What led to this confusion?
Well, like I said, I reviewed the interrogation of Charlie Martin as part of my investigation. And Charlie Martin, this freaking guy, he admitted to putting the ass in the mask in the interrogation. That's how I knew about it.
Would you recognize a picture of this mask if I were to show it to you today?
Yeah, I would.
At this permission to approach opposing counsel with what has been pre-marked as
Granted.
Approaching the witness in turn.
Thank you.
What did I just hand to you?
This is a picture of that scuba mask I was talking about.
Is it a fair and accurate copy?
Yeah.
Prosecution moves to enter Exhibit 11 into evidence.
No objections, Your Honor, per stipulation.
So admitted. And yes, you may tender, publish, all that fun stuff if you want to.
Yes, Your Honor. Investigator Rivera, how did you know that this mask belonged to Rob Armstrong?
Well, the production at the Saboteur, they color-coded all the scuba equipment. Rob's scuba equipment, including the mask, was blue.
Did you ever see this mask prior to conducting your investigation?
Yeah, I did. I actually saw Charlie Martin with this same mask the morning that Rob died.
What was Charlie Martin doing with this mask on the morning that Rob Armstrong died?
You know what? I'm not entirely sure. What I know is that I saw Charlie Martin messing around the scuba equipment in some way. I couldn't see exactly what he was doing with it.
Thank you, Investigator Rivera. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
May I proceed? Good afternoon, investigator.
Good afternoon.
I have just a few questions about some of your qualifications as an investigator.
Yeah, of course.
You said on direct examination that you transferred to the FTC, is that right?
Yeah, that's the Federal Trade Commission.
That's right. And since transferring to the FTC, you've been specifically investigating the saboteurs for fraud, is that right?
Well, not for specifically for rigging of the game show.
But that's for a white-collar crime, right?
Yeah, it's a white collar crime.
Now, before transferring to the FTC, you said you were an FBI agent, is that right?
Yeah, for 10 years, best 10 years of my life.
And over at the FBI, you were also a white-collar investigator.
Yeah, that's true.
So just to be clear, you've never investigated a violent crime case, have you?
Well, no, I focus mainly on white collar crimes.
You've never investigated a domestic violence case.
No, I haven't.
You've never investigated a robbery.
No.
You've never investigated a murder, have you investigated?
No.
But you insisted that you could lead the Rob Armstrong investigation.
Well, yeah, I was there the entire time on set. I was the most qualified one to do it.
Well, let's talk about some of that investigation. Riley Kay was your initial suspect, right?
Well, no, he's not. He was not my initial suspect for the murder.
Is it your testimony today that Riley Kay was not your first suspect?
We arrested him for tampering with evidence. He was not my first suspect in my murder investigation.
Did you prepare an affidavit before today's trial?
I did.
Would you be able to recognize that if I were to show it to you?
I would.
Investigator, is this the affidavit you prepared today?
Yeah, it is.
May I approach opposing counsel?
Yes.
We're drawing out a copy as well.
Yes.
Is this your signature on the last page, investigator?
Yeah, it is.
Now, if you could turn to line 241 and read silently as I read aloud. Let me know when you're there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you're fine.
Naturally, I started with attempting to interview Riley Kay, based on Kay's own attempted sabotage of the production servers.
Yeah, I never said Kay was a suspect.
We could read a couple lines before. I learned, this is on line 240. From this, I learned that Rob Armstrong had been poisoned, and I began to look thoroughly into potential suspects for the poisoning. Naturally, I started with attempting to interview Riley Kay.
Yeah, to find suspects, you interview people. Riley was the first one I interviewed. He was never my first suspect.
May I retrieve everything? No, investigator. You watched Riley Kay destroy evidence, right?
Yeah, pouring water over servers.
That's right, and that evidence was footage of the challenge that killed Rob, right?
Yes.
And like you said, she was dumping water onto the servers. He was dumping water onto the servers.
Yes.
But you didn't think that had anything to do with Rob's death at first, did you?
Well, it made me suspect that there was something more going on than just an accident, which is why I started this whole investigation, and is how I got the arrest warrant for Charlie Martin.
But at first, when you saw Riley Kay destroying evidence, you didn't think there was anything related to Rob's death.
Well, no, I thought that there was something related to Rob's death. That's why I began the investigation. Something fishy was going on.
Well, now I want to talk about some of the evidence that you might have overlooked. As you said, Riley Kay was arrested, is that right?
Yes, that's true.
And that was for destroying evidence.
For tampering with evidence, yeah.
And you didn't even open a murder investigation until 2 days later, is that right?
Well, I'd say that's a pretty reasonable time frame.
But you didn't open that murder investigation until you read the coroner's report, is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
But up until that point, you hadn't collected any evidence.
Well, no, the investigation hadn't started yet.
So you hadn't searched the hotel,
No.
but that was where you were staying, right?
Yeah.
That was where Charlie Martin was staying.
Yeah, it was.
That was where Rob Armstrong was staying.
Yeah, I believe so.
And that was where Riley Kay was staying.
Yes.
So you don't know what evidence might have been in those hotel rooms, do you?
I suppose not.
Now I want to talk about why you're here today.
Of course.
You joined the police interrogation of Riley Kay, is that right?
Yes, I headed it, actually.
But you joined the interrogation on May 1st at 2 p.m., is that right?
That seems like the time I joined, yeah.
And when you joined, you learned that Riley Kay had been offered immunity by the state of Midlands, is that right?
Yeah, immunity for accessory to murder.
That's right. So when you joined the interrogation, Riley Kay could not be charged with murder.
Accessory to murder is a pretty big difference.
But it wasn't until that point that Charlie Martin even became a suspect, was it?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
The state calls Atlas Hartley. Permission to proceed, Dr. Hartley, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Dr. Atlas Hartley.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a pathologist, board certified of course, but more specifically, I'm the chief medical examiner in Charlotte County, Midlands.
What do you do as the chief medical examiner?
I personally perform or supervise all autopsies that come into my office. It is our job to determine the circumstances behind the individual's death, the when and the how.
Where did you go to medical school?
Well, I received my bachelor's in forensic science from UF, and then I went to medical school at the University of Michigan. It was then off to Wake Forest Medical Center for residency.
Are you licensed to perform those autopsies?
Of course, I've been doing this job for quite some time. I didn't become the chief medical examiner for no reason.
So then, Dr. Hartley, would you mind sharing with us why you're here in court today?
Well, yes, an individual by the name of Rob Armstrong passed away on a reality television show known as The Saboteurs. I personally performed his autopsy and his toxicology report.
Did you use a method considered to be reliable in your field?
I always do.
Was that method reliant on sufficient facts and data?
Of course.
Did you apply that method reliably to the facts and data of this case?
Yes.
And did you reach your conclusions to a reasonable degree of scientific and medical certainty?
100%.
I want to talk about that autopsy report. Would you recognize a copy of it if I were to show it to you today?
Of course I would.
Permission to approach opposing counsel with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 3 granted. And approaching the witness and safety for the record.
Thank you.
This autopsy report lists the cause of death at the bottom right here. Can you explain that to the court?
Well, yes. I found the victim in this case asphyxiated underwater. In more simple terms, this victim drowned. But this was not a typical drowning. I came to learn that this victim inhaled oxalic acid before diving into the water, which induced his drowning.
But first, just to confirm, this is a copy of that report, correct?
Yes.
And is this fair and accurate copy of that report?
Seems to be yes.
The prosecution moves now to enter Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Objection.
No objection.
So, okay, thank you. I want you to walk us through how you came to this conclusion right here, the cause of death, step by step. First, let's begin with what the physical evidence of that acid was on Mr. Armstrong's body.
Well, on the outside, I noticed several abrasions around the victim's mouth and nose, which I found were consistent with that of chemical burns.
So then, what would those chemical burns typically indicate?
That would indicate that there was some sort of poisonous chemical irritant in contact with the victim's face for quite some time.
What does that suggest about Mr. Armstrong's cause of death?
Well, when there's a chemical irritant like that where I know there shouldn't be, especially around a sensitive area as someone's mouth and nose, that would suggest that that chemical would have a significant impact on the cause of that victim's death.
Was there any other physical evidence of acid on Mr. Armstrong's body?
Well, yes. Internally, I noticed that his throat and lungs were raw and red, but far more so than that of a typical drowning victim. It was that brought more evidence to show that this chemical irritant was likely a cause in this cause of death, and that's why I completed a toxicology report to determine what this chemical was.
Would you recognize a copy of that toxicology report if I were to show it to you today?
I would.
Permission to approach opposing counsel with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 4 granted. Good. And approaching the witness with the same for the record.
Thank you.
What did I just hand you?
This is the toxicology report that I conducted on Rob Armstrong.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of that report?
Looks to be yes.
So, Dr. Hartley, what about these tests stood out to you?
Well, I noticed there was a high concentration of calcium oxalate crystals within the victim's body. Now, this in and of itself is not necessarily alarming, but the amount of acid within this victim's mouth was 11 times the normal, healthy, and acceptable limit.
And what kind of symptoms would be associated with extremely high levels of that acid?
Well, the symptoms associated with oxalic acid poisoning really run the gamut. What's most dangerous about this chemical is that it restricts a victim's ability to breathe. This leads to dizziness, confusion, muscle weakness, and in this case, death.
Were you able to observe any of those symptoms yourself?
Yes. In fact, I observed all of these symptoms from the victim when I watched the underwater diving footage from episode 9. I then created notes on this footage as I was watching.
Would you recognize a copy of those notes if I were to show them to you today?
I would.
Permission to approach opposing counsel with what's been pre-marked as Exhibit 5? Granted. And permission to approach just approaching the witness with the same for the record? Apologies.
Thank you.
What did I just hand you?
These are the notes that I created on the underwater diving footage.
And these are fair and accurate copies of those notes?
It is.
The prosecution moves to enter Exhibit 5 into evidence. I think that's pre-stipulated.
It's per stipulation, no objection.
Awesome. What were the first signs of symptoms that you realized Mr. Armstrong was having?
Well, I saw the victim put this mask on his face and then quickly took it off and began coughing profusely. He put the mask back on his face and dove into the water.
After just a few minutes, I noticed that this victim began slowing down in his pace significantly.
How did those symptoms progress?
Well, they increased quite rapidly. I noticed that this victim began tilting in the water, breathing erratically, swimming with very little direction. These are all signs of classic disorientation. Finally, in his last few moments of oxalic acid poisoning, I noticed that this victim tore the mask off of his face as he was in such a state of confusion from a lack of oxygen.
So then, Dr. Hartley, I want to bring you back to Exhibit 3, the autopsy report in front of you. Can you explain to us all what the specific cause of death for Rob Armstrong is?
The victim in this case drowned. This drowning was induced by oxalic acid poisoning, which caused this victim to become disoriented underwater.
Permission to publish Exhibits 3, 4, and 5 to the jury.
Granted.
And with that, there are no further questions.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Hartley. I just have a few questions for you.
Go ahead.
I'd like to start off by clarifying how you became involved in today's case.
Sure,
You're the chief medical examiner for Charlotte County, correct?
of course.
But in today's case, Governor Sullivan personally requested that you get involved.
Well, yes, this is quite an important case.
It's not every day that the governor of Midlands himself asks you to get involved in a case, though.
Well, no.
That's right. He specifically asked you to get involved because a major media company was at the center of the investigation.
Well, yes, there were a lot of conflicts of interest. He wanted to ensure that this autopsy would be handled with the most professionalism possible.
I'd like to move on to discuss that autopsy. Your conclusion was specifically that Mr. Armstrong died of drowning induced by oxalic acid poisoning, correct?
That is exactly correct.
You concluded specifically that Mr. Armstrong inhaled that acid, correct?
I did.
And this is because most of the chemical irritation was in his lungs and his trachea,
That is true.
and the highest levels of oxalic acid were in his mouth and lungs, correct?
Absolutely.
But there was no oxalic acid in his esophagus.
No, I don't believe so.
There was no oxalic acid in his stomach contents.
Well, no, because this victim did not eat the acid. He inhaled it.
Exactly. All of the signs pointed towards this acid not being swallowed.
Correct.
I'd like to move on to discuss the lethality of oxalic acid. You would recognize a label for a bottle of oxalic acid?
I would.
Permission to first the witness with what has previously been admitted as Exhibit 13.
Granted.
I believe Your Honor already has the
We do.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Hartley, I'd like to direct your attention to the text directly under the word warning. It states, harmful if swallowed, correct?
That is true.
And a couple lines down it says, may cause respiratory irritation.
That is true. And in this case, that's exactly what it did.
That's right. And at the very bottom it says, if swallowed, immediately call a poison center or doctor.
That is what it says, yes.
So there is no indication on this label for a bottle of oxalic acid that inhaling this acid could be fatal, correct?
Well, no. Ingesting an acid is far more likely than inhaling it.
That's right. This label gives no indication.
True.
I'd like to move on to those events leading up to Mr. Armstrong's death. You reviewed some video footage in the course of your investigation.
I did.
Permission to approach the witness with what has previously been admitted.
Granted.
I know you went over a little bit of this in your direct examination, but I'd like to clarify some of these events. Now, when you arrived on the scene, you spoke with the producer for that show, Riley Kay, correct?
Quite briefly, yes.
And Riley Kay was vague with you about when those rescue divers were sent in.
That is true.
I'd like to see what that might have been. I'd like to direct your attention to 4 minutes and 30 seconds to 5 minutes and 30 seconds. At this point, Mr. Armstrong's pace slows noticeably, correct?
Yes.
And from 5 minutes and 30 seconds to 8 minutes, he fumbles with one of the nuts and his breathing becomes visibly erratic. Correct?
Yes, that is true.
And at this point, the rescue divers had not gone in to save him, correct?
No, I don't believe they did.
And from 8 minutes to 10 minutes, his eyes, he appears visibly disoriented, correct?
That is true.
From 10 minutes to 12 minutes, his eyes are visibly wide and unfocused on the close-up cameras.
That was which time, you said?
10 minutes to 12 minutes.
Okay, yes, I see that.
And again, rescue divers did not go in for him at this point.
Yes, I believe they perhaps should have.
That's right, they should have gone in at this point, correct?
Well, probably before this.
And at 14 minutes and 30 seconds, Mr. Armstrong begins to convulse, correct?
That is true.
He rips off his respirator mask.
Yes, he was in a state of hypoxia. His brain was not getting enough oxygen, and he was severely confused.
Exactly, that poisoning had progressed significantly.
But yes, he was being poisoned, yes.
And it wasn't until an entire minute later that emergency protocol was initiated, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong convulsed and inhaled water for a minute before they sent the rescue divers in for him.
Based on the timeline, yes, that is true.
No further questions, Your Honor. Move to publish these exhibits, Mr. Chairman.
May we proceed? Good afternoon, Charlie. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon, my name is Charlie Murray.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Martin?
Well, I've been on a few reality TV shows in my life. When I was growing up, reality TV show was like football in my house. We would sit in the living room, watch Big Brother, Survivor. So when I left college, I auditioned and I went on a few shows, but I realized that it wasn't for me. So now I just work at a media company, desk job, it's quiet, and it pays the bills.
Well, I'm interested in what you just said about reality TV. What do you mean it's not for you?
Well, what I loved about reality TV was the strategy, I liked the competition, and then the drama of it kind of appealed to the theater kid in me. But then I joined this show, The Saboteurs, and I didn't really enjoy what was going on behind the scenes. And since then, I've gone from loving reality TV show to honestly being disgusted by it.
Well, Charlie, do you know why you're here testifying today?
I do. I am being accused of murdering someone on that show, Rob Armstrong.
Did you?
Of course not. You've heard today that Rob and I were not on great terms, and that is true. We were not. But when I knew Rob, when he was my friend, I loved him like I loved the brother. I knew his wife, Ava. I knew his children, and I knew Rob. And I'm not talking about the reality TV show star that everyone knows. I'm talking about the real Rob. I did not murder him.
Now, I want to take a step back. Could you tell us how you and Rob first met?
Yes, of course. We met on season 2. That was my first season of The Saboteurs. Basically, the whole point of the show is that you have to sabotage. If you're a saboteur, you have to sabotage, you have to lie, and you have to make sure that you get to the end by murdering or eliminating other people. Rob and I were both saboteurs on season 2. That is how we met. We became close because we formed an alliance early on so that we could win.
And how close did you become?
Oh, we became very close. We started just talking about plans, strategies, and then we would just spend hours talking about where we would travel, what countries we'd go to, when we won, what restaurants we'd take our families. At some point, we got so close that Rob asked me if I could help him pick out an engagement ring for his fiance at that point, Ava. But like you've heard today, things, they changed.
Charlie, what do you mean things changed?
Well, we have this whole plan to win, and there were two sides of Rob. There was the side of Rob that was charismatic, funny, he was smart. And then there was the side of Rob that was competitive, and by competitive, I mean very competitive, and it was also cruel. And I met that side of Rob at the end of season 2 when he betrayed me.
I'm so sorry, Charlie, but could you talk a little bit more about that betrayal?
Sure. Basically, we have this whole plan. We would win if we stuck together. We wouldn't tell anyone that we were saboteurs. By the end of the season, he exposed me. He told everyone that I was a saboteur. I got murdered, and he won, and I'll be honest, losing the prize was not great. You know, I was pretty upset. But what really hurt the most was losing the friendship.
Well, how did it feel to be exposed like that?
I was sad. I was angry. You know, this was a national TV, so everyone saw it. I lost my confidence. My pride had been destroyed, and I know it sounds pathetic, but that is the whole reason I came back for another season, season 10. I wanted to show people that I was more than a loser.
Well, let's move on to season 10 then. What was your role on this season of the Saboteurs?
Well, in season 10, I was also a saboteur, just like I had been on my previous season. But my goal was a little different. Like I told you, I wanted people to get, to get me, to respect me. So my goal was to win, and I specifically wanted to win against Rob.
Mr. Martin, you've been sitting here in court today. You've heard a lot about a chemical called oxalic acid. Do you know what that is?
Yes, it's a powder. It's a sabotage that I used against Rob during the last challenge.
Would you be able to recognize the label on the bottle if I showed it to you?
I would, yeah.
Permission to approach opposing counsel, but has previously been admitted as Exhibit
Granted.
13. Charlie, how did you use this powder as a sabotage?
Well, I've used this at home before, and I remember that it had a pretty strong smell. So when I found it in the cleaning supply, I thought I would maybe put it in Rob's mask, and it would make him cough a little bit. It would slow him down so that I could catch up and win in the challenge, basically.
Were you not worried that it would be too dangerous?
At first I was, but I read the label, and I just thought if he maybe just inhaled it or sniffed it, it would be fine. It would make him cough and then catch up. I also sniffed it before I used it. It just made me cough like it had before because of the strong smell. And just to make sure, because I didn't do any sabotages that were not approved, I asked one of the producers if I could use it, Riley K specifically.
And what was Riley K's reaction when you asked?
Riley K said that it was fine as long as it made great TV.
Now, Charlie, well, why did you think that would be great TV?
I mean, Rob was an amazing competitor. He never lost. He'd come second, maybe third, but he'd never lost. So I thought maybe Rob losing the challenge would be a great moment for TV. Riley then asked me while I was doing the sabotage with her if I wanted to mess with his oxygen tank too.
Just to be clear for the members of the jury, did you mess with Rob's oxygen tanks?
No. The reason I asked Riley K about the oxalic acid is because I didn't know anything about it. I wanted to make sure that it was fine. However, I am scuba certified, and I know that it's not good really to do anything with oxygen when you're going 30 feet underwater, so I told her that I didn't think it was necessary.
We also heard the investigators say that Rob's oxygen tank was completely empty by the end of the challenge. Do you know if producer Riley K had something to do with that?
I have no idea. All I know is that after I did this sabotage, I left her alone with the equipment, and like the investigator said, the first thing Riley did after Rob died was destroy the footage. So I guess we'll never know.
Charlie, you've also heard today about Charlie, you've also heard a few people talk about what happened right after Rob's death. What do you remember about that?
Well, I was competing in the challenge, and I finished. I won, so I was celebrating. And then, out of the corner of my ear, I hear radios. They're saying, "What are you doing? Get him out. Get him out now."
Charlie, were they pulling Rob's body out of the water by the time you had finished your challenge?
No. I saw Riley turn off the radios, and then there were a few divers behind us. And I remember they were like, should we go in? Should we get him? And Riley just said, no, not yet.
Did those divers ever go in?
They did at some point. But by the time that they had pulled Rob out of the water, it was too late. He was dead.
And how were you feeling when you realized that Rob had actually passed away?
You know, in an ideal world, Rob and I would have sat down, we would have talked, we would have moved on from the drama of reality TV. But seeing his dead body just made me think about how we were never gonna get that. It made me think of Ava, his wife. It made me think of how he was never going to see his children grow up.
In that case, Your Honor, we'd like to read stipulation 18 onto the record. Parties agree that prior to this case, the estate of Rob Armstrong filed a wrongful death claim against Selkoff Studios. The parties settled prior to trial, and while the terms of that settlement shall not be disclosed due to the non-disclosure agreement, that non-disclosure agreement does not limit any witness testimony in this case. Mr. Martin, is this the first time you've heard about that lawsuit?
Not at all. After Rob died, because he was a reality TV show star, it was all over the news. The footage that we've talked about today leaked, and I used to drive past Silco Studios every morning. There would be protests out there. People had signs up. They said, "Where were the divers?" And people were upset, and as they should, because their own producer had let them on trial.
Well, in that case, Mr. Martin, do you know why Riley Kay isn't the one on trial today?
I have no idea. It was just today that I found out that Riley had received immunity for all of this.
And Charlie, do you know why you're the one on trial today?
I think that's something you would have to ask the people on that table. I don't know. It's easy to make me the villain. I wasn't friends with Ross. We were rivals on a fake show. And in a way, I blame me. You know, I blame me because I went on the show wanting respect. And now I'm sitting here and I might be getting thrown in jail for something I didn't do.
Thank you, Charlie. And with that, we have no further questions, Your Honor. May I retrieve the exhibit from the witness?
Just a second before it goes.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Mr. Martin. I'd like to start off by talking about your experience while on the Saboteurs. You were a Saboteur for 2 seasons, correct?
That's right, my first season, season 2, and then my second season, season 10.
You were very familiar with the rules of the game, correct?
I was, even though they changed from season 2 to 10 a little bit more than I expected.
The game format remained the same, correct?
To a degree, yeah, but some things changed.
Well, I'd like to talk about some of the sabotages that you performed as a Saboteur.
Of course,
Typically, Saboteurs would put Tabasco in a meal, correct?
that's right.
Sometimes they would make gagging sounds while someone ate.
Yes, they would.
This wasn't enough for you, was it?
What do you mean by that? I don't know.
Well, you wanted to take it a step further, didn't you?
Well, we had a lot of pressure on season 10 to make the show better, and that came bigger challenges and sabotages, if that is what you mean.
Well, you wanted to improvise off of whatever the script of the show was, correct?
That's right, that was with the permission of Riley Kay, the producer. Everything I did was with the permission of Riley Kay.
At this time, I'm approaching my bench with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 18. Permission to approach the council? Permission to approach the witness attorney?
Yes.
I just handed you messages that between you and Riley Kate, correct?
Yes.
Are they a fair and accurate copy?
Yeah, I think so.
At this time, prosecution moves to enter Exhibit 18D into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
I'd like you to read out loud messages that you sent to Riley Kate. Can you read out specifically the second message that you sent and from them below?
Yes, you said the second one that I sent?
Yes.
Yes, I said, how strict are the rules going to be this time, especially on what sabotages we can do? I wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing and that I was approved by Riley.
Can you keep reading, please?
Yes. Just tell me this, is there room to improvise and go off script? I have plans and backup plans. Do you need me to read the next one?
Yes, please.
And then I said, if you left me off the leash, I'll give you the ratings that you want.
You were ready to improvise off of whatever script production had planned, correct?
Only if they allow me to. I wasn't going to do anything that wasn't allowed.
You were ready to be let off the leash, weren't you?
If they allowed me, yeah, I would have.
Let's talk about some of the things that you did once you were let off this leash. You decided to target Rob Armstrong multiple times, correct?
Yeah, this whole season I was trying to eliminate him, but Rob was really good. He would really, like I said, lose challenges, so that became a little hard towards the end of the season.
You wanted Rob to feel an ounce of the pain that you had to live with for 5 years, correct?
Yeah, it's hard, you know, I was recognized everywhere outside in public as a loser, and I wanted Rob to lose. I mean, he betrayed me. He went from being my friend asking me for an engagement ring to literally betray me on national TV.
Well, let's talk about how you reacted to this betrayal. You decided to target Rob multiple times with sabotages, correct?
Yes, that's why I wanted him to be eliminated on the show.
Let's talk about one of the sabotages that you did on episode 8 of season 10. There was a diving challenge, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And you took Rob's respirator as part of your sabotage.
Yes, but I want to be clear that this challenge was only 10 feet deep. The last one was 30 feet deep. That is why I decided not to mess with his oxygen. Even if Riley wanted, I didn't think it was a good idea.
Even when you took this respirator, Rob still did well in the challenge, right?
Yeah, again, he was a great competitor. I never said he wasn't.
Exactly, but you were upset about this, weren't you?
I was, yeah, I tried to eliminate him multiple times already.
You were upset with the pathetic sabotages planned by the network.
I was a little frustrated. Yeah, I wanted to eliminate him.
At this time, I'm approaching my bench with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 19C. Approaching the opposing counsel. Permission to approach? Permission to approach the witness attorney. I just handed you some other messages between you and Riley Kate, correct?
Yes, you did.
Now, can you read out loud the message that you sent to Riley, please?
Which one of these?
Can you read out loud the third message that you sent?
I said, well, it's not happening again. I'm going to stop him before the next one. We can talk about whatever pathetic sabotages were planned by the network, but I'll tell you right now that I'm done doing this the right way. It's time for something stronger.
Exactly, Mr. Martin. You were done with doing this the right way.
Yeah, usually we would only do one sabotage, but I thought that we needed more if I wanted to win against Rob, which is why I asked Riley if we could do more than one sabotage in the last challenge.
You wanted to do something stronger, correct?
Yes, like an extra sabotage, that's right.
Well, let's talk about the sabotages that you did once you were done with whatever pathetic sabotages were planned by Network. Let's talk about the final challenge. For the final challenge, you performed a series of sabotages against Rob, correct?
I performed 2 sabotages, the weights and then the powder that I put in the mask so that he would cough, and then you could buy me some time.
Let's talk about the weights first. Everyone had to wear a backpack, correct?
Yes, that's right.
All these backpacks had weights in them.
Yes, they did.
Well, every backpack but one, right?
Yeah, mine had weight, but it was just very lightweight. It was just rocks.
You moved the weights from your backpack into Rob's backpack, didn't you?
I did, yes. That was the first sabotage.
Well, let's talk about the other sabotage that you did. You released air from the air tanks, correct?
No, I did not.
Well, you were alone with Rob's air tanks for 10 minutes, weren't you?
No, I was not. I was never alone with the equipment.
Well, you had access to this equipment the morning of Rob's death, didn't you?
I did, yes, but again, I was never alone. I did the sabotages, both of them with Riley next to me.
Well, you are scuba certified, correct?
I am, yeah, that's why I didn't mess with his oxygen, because I knew that would be unnecessary and dangerous.
But you do know how to turn the air tank on and off, correct?
Yes, I do. That's part of my training.
Well, let's talk about your next sabotage. For your next sabotage, you used a chemical, right?
Yes, that's right.
Exactly, you used an acid, correct?
Yeah, I did. It was powder.
Well, you knew that this acid was strong, correct?
I knew it smelled really strong, yeah.
At this time, I'm approaching my bench book has already been entered into evidence as Exhibit 13. Permission to approach the witness concern?
Yes. As opposing counsel, Bryson.
Now, can you read out loud the part that it says about inhalation, please? About respiratory irritation.
Yeah, it says may cause respiratory irritation, which I thought it did on me when I sniffed it and it made me cough, which is the exact same effect that I expected from Corona.
Can we talk about the warnings that it says below this respiratory irritation? What are the things that you are supposed to use for protective equipment that it says on the sheet?
It says you need to wear gloves, protective clothing, eye protection, and face protection.
Exactly. You need to wear face protection if you come in contact with this acid, correct?
That's what it says on the label, yeah.
Yet you put this acid in a face mask, correct?
That's right, yeah, I did.
A mask that you knew belonged to Rob Armstrong, correct?
I did, yes. It was a sabotage against Rob, but again, if it was dangerous, I would have expected Riley to tell me that it was. And if she had told me that it was dangerous, I would not have done it.
At this time, I'm approaching my bench with what has been pre-entered into evidence as Exhibit 11. Approaching the council, permission to approach the witness's turn. This is the mask that you put the acid in, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Can you show us where you put the acid in this mask?
The mask is facing. I would have put it over here from the back of the mask.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
No, you're right, Your Honor, we just asked it.
May I proceed? Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Micah Lynn.
What do you do for a living, Dr. Lynn?
I'm a board-certified psychologist specializing in clinical and forensic psychology. Currently, I serve as the chief forensic psychologist for the Midlands Forensic Evaluation Center, or the FEC.
How did you get involved in that line of work?
Well, originally I planned to become a photographer. You know, weddings and engagements, but the first wedding I worked, the bride was murdered that night. The pictures I took for the wedding actually became part of an investigation, and I was even called to testify in trial. As it turns out, the groom suffered a psychotic break. And, well, that's what got me interested in forensic psychology and also testifying in court.
Do you know why you're here in court today?
Yes, I was hired by defense counsel to provide a psychological evaluation of Charlie Martin following the death of Rob Armstrong on the Saboteurs game show.
Before getting into that clinical assessment, what are your qualifications to be a psychologist?
Well, after graduating with my bachelor's in psychology, I went on to earn my doctor's in psychology from Pepperdine. I practiced clinical and forensic psychology for over 2 decades. And during my time at the FEC, I've testified and evaluated hundreds of criminal defendants in cases just like today's.
How did you perform your assessment of Charlie Martin?
I conducted what's called the double I method. It's the gold standard in my field.
Did you reliably apply this method to today's case?
Absolutely.
Did you rely on sufficient facts and data to reach a conclusion?
Yes, I did.
Do you have experience in cases like today's?
Yes, I've previously worked as a psychological consultant for reality TV show contestants specifically. I've also published extensive research on the psychological effects of reality TV. You could say it's an interest of mine.
Could you elaborate on the psychological effects of reality TV?
Well, what I've found is that reality TV shows, like The Saboteurs, they heavily incentivize harmful behaviors like manipulation, betrayal, deceit. In fact, producers on these shows often encourage these harmful behaviors to boost their show's ratings.
Moving on to that clinical assessment, could you elaborate on that double I method that you mentioned before?
Sure. So the double I method consists of two separate components. First, an inventory, and then an interview.
Let's go through each of those components individually, starting with the inventory. Could you explain this test to the members of the jury?
The inventory evaluates the 5 main personality categories, and it gives us a more detailed snapshot of a patient's personality. What we're looking for here are excessively high or excessively low levels of a trait. Now this could indicate potential concerns.
How did Charlie Martin score in these categories?
Well, the majority of Martin's scores landed in that middle category, meaning overall he's stable and well-adjusted. He didn't exhibit any of those glaring signs of concerns, personality-wise.
Moving on to that second stage of your method, the interview. What's the purpose of this interview in the clinical assessment?
So the goal of the interview is to look at a situation from our patient's lens, to get their point of view. So for Charlie Martin, I asked about his time during the show and also his relationships with various cast and crew members.
What did you learn through this interview?
I noticed that Mr. Martin showed significant signs of fear and anxiety towards the game show as a whole, and more specifically a producer named Riley Kay.
Did Mr. Martin say anything about Riley Kay specifically?
Mr. Martin said that Riley Kay pressured him heavily to do something to eliminate Rob Armstrong. Riley Kay told him that if Rob Armstrong won again, he would be made out to be the ultimate loser.
Did Mr. Martin cave to this pressure?
Well, the night before Rob
Objection.
Armstrong's death,
Your Honor, improper opinion on the ultimate issue.
Sorry. What's your objection again?
Improper opinion on the ultimate issue.
Okay, response.
Your Honor, this question did not elicit any testimony concerning the ultimate issue. I simply asked the witness if Mr. Martin caved to this pressure from Riley Kay, not if Mr. Martin killed Mr. Armstrong at the direction of Riley Kay. Furthermore, if I may proffer,
Briefly, yeah.
I believe the witness is about to testify that he caved to this pressure in doing the sabotage, and that's the total extent of this testimony.
Short response on those grounds.
Your Honor, we would be open to a special instruction clarifying that the testimony should only be kept to the actions that Mr. Martin took and not whether or not it was an actual opinion on the ultimate issue, because the question was whether or not they caved to Riley Kay's extreme demands in the scenario, and that could very quickly go down a slippery slope.
If it goes down that slippery slope, feel free to re-raise your objection, but I don't think he's asking on the ultimate issue here, and seeing as we are in trial, I can't issue a special instruction, but
Limiting instruction or
if a limiting instruction is necessary, absolutely feel free to re-raise your objection, but for now I'm gonna overrule.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. I'll restate that question for you. Did Charlie Martin cave to this pressure?
well, the night before Rob Armstrong's death, Riley Kay once again urged Mr. Martin to do something to slow Rob Armstrong down. However, Mr. Martin mentioned that all the sabotage he did that night was with the explicit permission and direction of Riley Kay.
What did they want him to do?
Well, in Mr. Martin's own words, the name of the game is the Saboteurs. That's the whole point, to hurt people. Riley Kay wanted me to hurt Rob Armstrong. That's what brings in the ratings.
I have no further questions, Your Honor. I tender the witness for cross.
A couple of questions about that report, but let's begin with how you made it first.
Of course.
You never talked to anyone else except the defendant in today's case, correct?
I did not interview anyone but the defendant, but I reviewed footage and reports and everything concerning the show for my assessments.
So you never talked to Riley Kay,
No, I didn't.
and you never talked to a single staff member on the production of the Saboteurs.
No, but I did review all the footage that was pertinent to this situation.
And that footage was the footage that was published,
I reviewed all available footage.
and all the available footage that was published, correct?
That's right.
That was published to the public?
I reviewed the footage they gave me. I'm not sure what is released to the public or not.
Alright, so you reviewed the footage from seasons 2 to seasons 9 that was published to the public and edited.
That's right.
So you viewed an edited version of what was happening on the Saboteurs to determine your opinions about the set of the Saboteurs.
I'm sorry, I think you misunderstood. I reviewed all the footage that was available provided to me from defense counsel for season 2 and season 10 that Charlie Martin was on. I'm not sure if it's edited or not. I can't tell you that.
So you viewed this footage as your supplement to your investigation, yet you're not sure whether or not it was edited to begin with?
No, ma'am, I'm not an investigator. I'm simply performing a psychological evaluation. I did not perform an investigation of any kind.
And this report is based off of footage that you don't know if the production tampered with.
I'm not sure why they would provide me with that footage. That's tampered.
Alright, that's fine. Let's move on. Let's move on to what was said in the report. Specifically, the first thing you mentioned to the defendant. You told him that everything that was said in that interview could be used in court today, correct?
That's correct. It's absolutely essential that our patients are informed and consent to this procedure.
And that's important because the defense counsel came to you advice on an insanity defense, correct?
That's what they hired me for, a psychological evaluation, but the consent is very important for ethical concerns.
Yes, I understand that consent is important for ethical concerns, but if you find that the defendant can use an insanity defense, that means they're not liable for murder in today's trial.
I'm sorry, again.
Objection, compound.
Sustained. Let's fine, we can walk through this.
Motion to strike, Your Honor.
So true. And if there is so the defendant came to you for an insanity defense, correct?
The defense counsel, their attorneys came to me to perform a psychological evaluation comprehensively of Charlie Martin.
And you're aware that if someone has an insanity defense, they're not legally liable to the same degree if enough evidence can prove that.
I am simply a psychologist. I'm sorry, I leave the legal terminology to the judges and the lawyers. I was just here to determine the psychological profile of Mr. Martin.
To clarify, you've been doing insanity tests on defendants for over 2 decades, correct?
I've been working in clinical and forensic psychology. Again, that includes reality TV, it includes testifying in trial, it includes various things, but legal concerns is not my specialty. I don't think I could ever do your job.
And just to clarify, you've been testifying on these for decades, correct? In court today?
I've been testifying about psychological evaluations, yes.
But you don't know the implication of these psychological evaluations?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative, or apologies, more prejudicial than probative. This
No,
witness.
not more prejudicial than probative. Got a different one?
Could opposing counsel please restate the question?
That sounds good.
Yet you're unaware of the implication of these psychological evaluations.
That's not correct. I understand the psychological implications of these evaluations, not the legal ones fully. I don't think I'm the right person to answer that for you.
Alright, so let's move on to what was actually said in this report. It's important to note that the defendant was talking a lot about Riley Kay, correct?
Yes, he did mention a lot about Riley Kay and about the pressures that he felt from her.
He mentioned a lot about what Riley Kay was telling him.
That's right. Multiple times he was urged by Riley Kay to perform a sabotage or to eliminate Rob Armstrong, oftentimes beyond the rules of the game.
But it's important that never once did he tell you that Riley Kay explicitly told him to hurt the defendant.
Not explicitly, no.
So, in the 6-hour conversation you had with the defendant, you had a 6-hour conversation, correct?
I had an interview, that's correct.
6.5 hours, right?
That's right.
All about what happened on the saboteurs.
The 6.5 hours also include my assessments, the psychological testing. It wasn't simply just the interview.
Yes, but in this interview, never once did the defendant tell you that Riley Kay explicitly told him to hurt another contestant.
Not explicitly, but he definitely felt the pressure, and that's what he felt Riley Kay wanted him to do.
No further questions. Thank you.
Hence calls Gray Marlowe to the stand.
Come on up. Mrs. Marlowe, take my hand down.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
Hey y'all, I'm Dr. Marlowe, but y'all can just call me Dr. Marlowe.
Dr. Marlowe.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Yes, ma'am.
And what do you do for a living, Dr. Marlowe?
Well, I'm an aspiring, almost basically kind of in the works, you could say that I'm a reality TV show host.
Forgive me, ma'am, but you introduce yourself as Dr. Marlowe. Are you a doctor?
Well, I spent too many years in med school and I have way too much debt to not be addressed as such, so you guys can call me Dr. Marlowe. But I haven't practiced in about, I'd say 10 years. It's like Dr. Phil, because y'all know that man is not helping those people medically.
All right, Dr. Marlowe it is then. Can you tell us a little bit about that reality show you mentioned?
Okay, so stay with me. You know how a little too often during a football game a player gets hurt? No? Okay. Well, you were supposed to say no, but I'll elaborate for you.
Oh, no, I have no idea.
Thank you. So let's look at LSU for an example. Every once in a while, a little too often during a game, they get hurt. Well, I will be looking at their medical records and proving that they're not actually hurt and that they really just want an excuse for not being in the SEC championship once again.
All right, Dr. Marlowe, I wish you luck with that TV show. Do you know why I asked you to testify today?
I'm not really sure why you asked me to be here, but I know why Selcog Studios asked me to be here.
You mentioned that Selcog Studios asked you to be here. Can you tell the members of the jury what Selcog Studios is?
Yeah, they're the one production company that does the show The Saboteurs, the one where Rob Armstrong died.
You mentioned Selcog Studios asked you to testify today. What kind of testimony did they ask you for?
They wanted me to do an investigation into Rob Armstrong's death.
I'll leave it for the government's counsel to ask you about that investigation. I want to talk about something else you mentioned. You said Selcog Studios asked you for this testimony. Did they say why they wanted that investigation?
Yeah, well, the president of Selcog Studios, he called me up a few days after the incident, hooting, hollering, wailing. I mean, I was really concerned for his mental well-being, but he said that Selcog Studios was being blamed for the death of Rob Armstrong.
So I want to be very clear about what kind of testimony Selcog Studios asked you for. Did they ask you specifically to testify for the government?
I wouldn't say that.
Did they ask you to testify for Charlie Martin?
This one? No, I mean, I wish they would have said, how you doing? But, no.
So Dr. Marlowe, what testimony did they ask you for?
Well, they presented me with an opportunity. They said that if some villain gets blamed for the death of Robert Armstrong, then I get a couple of benefits.
I want to explore just how far Selcog Studios might be willing to go to make a villain. You mentioned some benefits. Were any of those monetary?
Yeah, and I guess they really needed my help because they offered me quite a lot of money. I mean, J-Lo would have been shaking in her boots.
Well, Dr. Marlowe, about how much money are we talking about?
$100,000. I mean, that's a car, a trip, a dog, a new body, if I needed one.
Did Selcog Studios offer you any other benefits for your testimony?
They did. See, I pitched them my show idea, and the producer and the president called me the future Wendy Williams of sports medicine. How you doing? But the thing is, unless SoCal Studios is found not responsible for the death of Robert Armstrong, then I might not be on my show.
I want to be clear, did Cellcom Studios threaten you?
I wouldn't exactly say that. I'm hard one to threaten, but the fate of my show and y'all's entertainment lies in the verdict today.
We're in a courtroom, Dr. Marlowe, so I want to make this clear for the court and the members of the jury. How far would you be willing to go for that show?
Well, I mean, I already got my $100,000, so I'm good on money right now. And I don't care what kind of bribery or threats SoCal Studios throws at me. I'm not committing perjury, but I mean, don't tell them that just in case they want to slip me a little something on the side.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Marlowe. I have nothing further at this time.
Cross.
Hello. Before we get into the details of the autopsy, I would just like to clarify something. You yourself have not performed an autopsy in years, correct?
Yeah, that's true, but I mean, I was in school for a long time, so I felt okay to do it.
And you've also never performed an autopsy involving oxalic acid inhalation?
No, I can't say that I ever heard of oxalic acid beforehand. I'm a fabuloso girl myself, but I had never come across it.
You've never come across oxalic acid before?
Not in my own personal expertise, no.
Now I'd like to talk about the abrasions found during the autopsy.
Objection, Your Honor, to attorney testifying.
It's cross. I'm gonna give a little leeway,
Yes, Your Honor.
but feel free to re-raise it.
Yes, Your Honor.
You agree with Dr. Hartley that there were abrasions on Rob Armstrong's face, correct?
I do agree, but I don't agree where they necessarily came from.
You think that they came from Rob Armstrong ripping off his mask, correct?
Yes, those masks are on
Objection, Your Honor, at this time to an improper expert opinion. At this point, none of the prongs of 702 have been laid on the record, and we would ask that those be laid on the record before opposing counsel asks this witness for any expert testimony about what did or didn't cause the abrasions on Mr. Armstrong's face.
You're not wrong, and the court recognizes that's a very valid objection, but again, it's cross. I'm gonna give some leeway.
Yes, Your Honor.
You believe that the abrasions on Rob Armstrong's face were caused by him ripping off his mask, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the mask was on pretty tightly. You know, they used to do this challenge a few years back. I was, still young or whatever, but they would put suction cups on their lips. It would make their lips real big. I'd say that's about how tight the mask was, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they came from.
You also agree with Dr. Hartley that there was abrasions within the nose and mouth as well, correct?
Yeah, that's true.
Dr. Marlowe, if these were caused by Rob Armstrong ripping off his mask, how could they have gotten within his nose and his mouth?
I mean, I'm not doubting that something may have happened. I do believe that there were abrasions within his trachea.
Yes, and you agree that his trachea and bronchi were redder and rawer than you had ever seen before in an autopsy?
Yes, that's true.
In a drowning case specifically. You agree with Dr. Hartley that there was oxalic acid within Rob Armstrong's system, correct?
Yes, I agree with that, 100%.
And you agree that Rob Armstrong's cause of death was drowning, correct?
Yes, I do agree that he drowned.
Rob Armstrong, you agree that Rob Armstrong ripping off that the respiratory distress that led to Rob Armstrong ripping off his mask was caused by the oxalic acid inhalation, correct?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. Dr. Hartley said that the cause of his drowning was due to poisoning by the oxalic acid. And I mean, everyone has their thing. Oprah likes to put cars under people's chairs, Wendy Williams likes to be in people's business, and Dr. Hartley likes to call poison like the boy who called wolf.
It is your testimony today that you did not say that oxalic acid inhalation was likely the cause of the respiratory distress that led to Rob Armstrong ripping off his mask?
I do think that inhalation could have been the cause, but I don't think that it was due to a poisoning, like Dr. Hartley said.
So just to clarify, it wasn't due to the poisoning, but it was due to the
acid, as I've verified, it helps, or not helps, it damages the respiratory system, so it makes it hard to breathe. It makes your nose burn, and I think that that was the cause of Rob Armstrong's drowning. He couldn't breathe, so he took the mask off and he was underwater and couldn't drown. Dr. Hartley believes that he was poisoned due to oxalic acid, and that's what I tend to disagree with.
Rob Armstrong died shortly after ripping off his mask, correct?
Yes, that's true. He drowned.
No further questions.
Redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor, we just ask that Dr. Marlowe be excused. And at this time, we'd also like to re-raise that lack of personal knowledge objection from Mr. Patel's testimony earlier in trial.
I was hoping you wouldn't forget. Response.
Would you mind repeating that?
Yes, prior in trial, Mr. Patel testified that Charlie Martin was not given permission from any member of production to put oxalic acid in Rob Armstrong's mask. We objected lack of personal knowledge because Mr. Patel was not with Mr. Martin for the entirety of the time he was on the show. And we in fact heard testimony to the opposite today. In fact, the producer had given Mr. Martin permission.
I didn't.
So when we were on direct, right? Constructively, outside of the jury's knowledge, we heard kind of an offer of proof, right? And I let the testimony conditionally be heard just for my ears only, under the assumption, with the hope there that we would hear it come out in court today, that well, you're gonna say it better than me. But we didn't hear the testimony, so do you have it?
My witness, Rowan Patel, only testified that the production team as a whole, including himself, who all the sabotages were supposed to go through, was not aware of this. Whether Riley Kay did or did not say to Charlie and was with Charlie Martin when the oxalic acid was placed was not in question when I asked Rowan Patel the question. It was simply whether Rowan Patel knew.
Understood. Response?
Your Honor, we don't believe that that was the testimony. From my memory, the testimony was, did Charlie Martin have permission from production to do this sabotage? And in fact, opposing counsel in their argument stated that Mr. Patel would know if any member of production had given him permission. But we learned today that that wasn't the case on the direct examination of Mr. Martin.
One last response.
She worded it the same way this last time, and I said specifically that any official sabotage would have to go through the production team, which is the truth.
Sure.
It was maybe off the record approved by Riley Kay, and I did actually acknowledge and say I was not questioning that. That was
Absolutely. Totally hear you, counsel. I don't think we heard that testimony elicited from any of the witnesses in the jury's presence. So at this point, I will sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. In that case, we ask that Dr. Marlowe be excused and we rest our case in chief at this point.
May it please the court. The acid, the mask, and the aftermath.
Feel free to pick that up so it doesn't get in your way. I'm so sorry.
We are here today because of the acid, the mask, and the aftermath. We are here today because of the death of Rob Armstrong. The loss of a life due to the actions made by Charlie Martin. The loss of a friend, loss of a husband, loss of a father. Charlie Martin's family will now forever have an empty seat at the dinner table. His son will never be able to watch his father cheering for him in the crowd at his football game again. And his daughter will be able to walk the aisle at her wedding day with her father. And this is because of the reckless behavior of Charlie Martin. I'd like to take you back to the morning of April 6th. Now, this morning, Rob Armstrong was ready to compete in another challenge. It was known as the Challenge Beast. He was ready to conquer and win again. all of a sudden, he puts on a mask. He takes a deep breath. He starts coughing. And he competes in the challenge with this mask. He begins to struggle. And all of a sudden, he watches the surface slip away. Because this mask had an acid. An acid that was placed by Charlie Martin. And today, we're here to deal with the aftermath of this. Now, members of the jury, we are here today to get justice for the life of Rob Armstrong. And this is not something that we take lightly. In fact, we came here to you today knowing that we had to prove to you the highest burden in the law of Midlands. We have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the actions of Charlie Martin led to the death of Rob Armstrong due to the reckless behavior that showed an extreme indifference to the value of human life. And we have done this today. We have done this today by telling you exactly what happened. I'd like to take you step by step in a timeline of what happened that day. Now, today you learned about a supply closet on said saboteurs. A supply closet that contains an acid. This acid is called oxalic acid. Investigator Rivera came to you today and he told you that no contestants were supposed to be allowed in here. Production did not allow any contestants, yet he did see one. This one contestant was Charlie Martin. What else was in this closet? It was Charlie Martin and the acid. Now, this acid was placed in a mask. And a mask that belonged to Rob Armstrong. A mask that Charlie Martin knew belonged to him. You also heard from Charlie Martin today in court. And Charlie read out loud the dangers of this oxalic acid. He told you that it would cause respiratory irritation, and that anyone that came in contact with it should wear protective gloves, protective clothing, eye protection, face protection. Face protection. Yet he put acid in a mask that would come in direct contact with the face of Rob Armstrong. Now, he knew the dangers. He saw this warning label, yet he proceeded in reckless action. You also heard today from a doctor. You heard from Dr. Hartley. Dr. Hartley came here today and she told you about a diving equipment. A diving equipment that shows exactly how Rob Armstrong's behavior matched up with the effects of acid poisoning. Now, you heard about how Rob Armstrong struggled to breathe. You heard about how he struggled to figure out where he was. You heard about how he died. The defense came to you today and they also provided you a doctor. However, their doctor told you absolutely nothing. The only thing that their doctor could tell you was that before this, they had never heard of this acid before. They used fabuloso instead. They couldn't tell you anything about the oxalic acid. Well, let's talk about the dangers of that oxalic acid. That oxalic acid was lethal. It was lethal in today's trial. This was not within the norms of the rules of the game. You also heard today from a challenge designer called Mr. Patel. And Mr. Patel told you about what was allowed in the challenges versus what wasn't allowed in the challenges. He explained to you how production was supposed to supervise all of the sanctioned sabotages. They were all supposed to go through him before. You also heard that he has no idea how the oxygen tank released so much oxygen before. That oxygen tank was supposed to hold 30 minutes of oxygen that Rob Armstrong was supposed to rely on. You also heard from Mr. Patel about who had access to this oxygen tank. He told you that all saboteurs had access to it. But at this point in the game, there was only one saboteur. And that saboteur is Charlie Martin. Now, you also heard from Charlie Martin that he had access to this on the morning of Rob Armstrong's death. And during that time, what did Charlie Martin do? Charlie Martin turned off the oxygen tank, releasing the air, which led to Rob Armstrong running out of air on the day of the challenge. Now, this was enough for Charlie. Charlie made sure that he was done with the pathetic sabotages that were planned by the network. He was the one that texted Riley Kay about this. He wanted to be let off his leash. Now, he was done doing this the right way. What did Charlie Martin do when he was let off his leash? He made sure to hurt Rob. He told you today that he wanted Rob to experience an ounce of the pain that he had to live with for 5 years. And that's exactly what he did today. However, that resulted in a death. It resulted in the loss of the life of Rob Armstrong. And we have presented you this today. Now, members of the jury, it is your job to go and figure out whether or not Charlie Martin is guilty of this. When you go into the deliberation room in the back, you have to check off a box. A box that we have given you all of the evidence today to check off. Find the defendant guilty.
And may I ask how much time I have remaining for close?
9:33.
Thank you. May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. They created the villain they needed. Members of the jury, we've been here for about 3 hours now. You've heard a lot of testimony, you've seen a lot of exhibits, you even met the future Wendy Williams of sports medicine. But I understand this probably isn't the way that you wanted to spend your Saturday afternoon. So I want to ask, why are we here? Normally when I stand in this well, I'm confident that we're here to get justice. But today was never about justice. See, because if there's one thing that I want, that Mr. Martin wants, it's justice for Rob Armstrong and his family. So I ask you, members of the jury, where is Rob Armstrong's family? You won't see them in this courtroom. And that's because they know the truth. They know it was Selkov Studios, not Charlie Martin, who caused the death of Rob Armstrong. That's why they filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Selkov Studios, not Charlie Martin. So if we're not here to get justice on behalf of a grieving family, then why are we here? To understand that, we have to go back to the beginning. You heard today a lot about good TV. You heard about how far Selkov Studios is willing to go for good TV. And when the man who Ms. Urbina described a minute ago as a challenge beast is encountering one of the hardest challenges yet, it's possible he may lose his first challenge ever on national TV. Well, that would make great TV. You heard today that Selkov Studios tried to make that happen. They pushed too far. You heard today that while Mr. Armstrong struggled underwater for 10 minutes, while Mr. Armstrong drowned on camera, a producer turned off the radio, giving her a warning, held the rescue divers back, saying, "No, don't go in yet," and she watched the man drown. And that's why you heard today that the first person arrested for the murder of Rob Armstrong, the first person interviewed in the investigation into the murder of Rob Armstrong, was that producer, Riley Kay. That created a problem for Selkov Studios. Because what you've heard today from nearly every witness who's taken that stand is that the public blamed Selkov Studios. Having your lead producer under investigation for murder, having protests outside your building asking where were the divers, not to mention the wrongful death lawsuit that the Armstrongs were filing, it wasn't good for Cell Cobb Studios' business. So they had to do something. They had to make a villain. And we heard today how they did that. The president of Cell Cobb Studios called up Dr. Marlowe and he said, Dr. Marlowe, I know I already offered you a TV show, but change of plans. Unless our name gets cleared in court, you're not getting that TV show. And by the way, I'll pay you 6 figures to clear our name in court. Just make me a villain. I need another villain. Meanwhile, the person who you heard today threw evidence in the ocean, deleted evidence, dumped water on evidence, and held rescue divers back while a man drowned in front of her, the state gives her a pass. They give her criminal immunity. Instead of charging the real killer, they made the villain they needed. And that was a problem for the state today. Because when they walked through those doors, they brought with them a burden. It's a burden that's been sitting on this table all throughout trial, and it's a burden they haven't been able to meet. It was their job to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt, that's the highest bar in our legal system, that 2 things were true. That Charlie Martin was the cause of Rob Armstrong's death, and that Charlie Martin was reckless in his actions. And they weren't able to prove that to you today, members of the jury, because all they were doing was creating a villain. Now let's break down how they weren't able to prove those 2 things to you today, and let's start with causation. Like we said, it was their job to prove that Charlie Martin was the cause of Rob Armstrong's death. You heard about a couple things that might have caused the death of Rob Armstrong. You heard about some oxalic acid. You heard about rescue divers not going in to save a man who was drowning. Because what every witness who took the stand today who could testify to the cause of death agreed on is it was the drowning that caused the death of Rob Armstrong. Members of the jury, if someone had gone in to save Rob Armstrong from the water the way they were supposed to, Rob Armstrong would not have died. Now, Mr. Martin admits, we admit, it's possible the oxalic acid had something to do with Rob Armstrong's death. But when we stand in this courtroom, possible is not good enough. If you believe it's possible that the oxalic acid was the thing that killed Rob Armstrong, you still have to find Mr. Martin not guilty. If you think it's likely it was the oxalic acid that killed Rob Armstrong, you still have to find Mr. Martin not guilty. If you think it's probable it was the oxalic acid that killed Rob Armstrong, you still have to find Mr. Martin not guilty. If you believe there's even a chance that if Riley Kay had done her job correctly and sent those divers in, Rob Armstrong would have lived, then you have to find Charlie Martin not guilty. But it wasn't just the causation that the state failed to prove today. They also failed to prove that Mr. Martin was reckless, and that's because we know he wasn't. When you go back to that deliberation room, I want you to pay close attention to Exhibit 13. This is what Charlie Martin had to go off of when he made his decision. This is the label that was on the bottle of oxalic acid. You see, it was the state's job today to prove that Charlie Martin knew he was taking a risk that could seriously hurt Rob Armstrong. What evidence did they bring to you that proved he would know that? When we look at this label, we see it's harmful if swallowed. We see it's harmful if it gets in the eyes. All it says about inhalation is it could be irritating. But that wasn't good enough for Charlie Martin, because he cares about Rob Armstrong and he's not a reckless person. So he wanted to try it out for himself. He sniffed some of the powder. It just made him cough. It was just an irritant. But that's still not good enough for Charlie Martin because he cares about Rob Armstrong and he's not a reckless person. So he asks producer Riley Kay, is this safe if I put this in the mask? Riley Kay says, you can do whatever you want, as long as it makes good TV. Members of the jury, the state couldn't meet their burden today because they were creating the villain they needed. And I want you to think about the kind of witnesses they put on that stand to meet their burden today. Because what you learned is every single witness who took the stand benefits from the corruption of this justice system. They brought you Dr. Hartley, who is only on this case because the government specifically asked her to testify today. Because the governor was worried about a major media company being involved with this kind of investigation. You heard from Mr. Patel, who told you on the stand he hopes Charlie Martin gets convicted so people stop blaming Selkoff Studios and Mr. Patel can get his job back. They brought you Investigator Rivera, who admitted to you he did collect all the evidence from the crime scene, who gave immunity to Riley Kay. Members of the jury, there's a reason I get so worked up about this. And it's because I want justice for Rob Armstrong. My colleagues want justice for Rob Armstrong. Mr. Martin wants justice for Rob Armstrong. But the state took that opportunity away from us. They gave criminal immunity to Riley Kay. Don't let one injustice create another. You, not me, not Miss Urbina, you are the last line of defense between a man and a conviction he doesn't deserve. They made the villain they needed. Don't let them get away with it. Find Charlie Martin not guilty. Thank you.
Rebecca? Yes, Your Honor. Please support. The villain created himself. We are here today because of the reckless behavior of Charlie Martin. We are here today because of the mask. A mask that he knew belonged to Rob Armstrong. An acid that he knew should be worn with face protection if dealt with. Yet he still chose to put the acid in there. That is reckless. That is why we are here today. Find the defendant guilty.